Hello, and welcome back to another Lower Decks review from the Leper Colony, where things are somehow even worse than they are before. You may notice, Nathan, this is an awful layout. The microphone and myself is in the way of a single monitor. That's because right down there is my computer sitting under the bed, dead. I think the motherboard needs replaced, which is a problem. You may now be going, wow, Nathan, you don't have the computer. How the heck am I watching this video? That's because I've got this. The university laptop, which I thought would be the end of the YouTube career for a while, losing the computer. But thanks to the film department and the art department, the university laptop actually comes with the entire Adobe suite installed, and I had the sense to back up all of my commonly used editing files, including the thumbnail template for this series, on my external hard drive. The only thing I've lost are my logos and those 8 Eagle Moss pre-recording. So Monday's videos might stop. I might be able to review some enterprises if I really want to for the next week or two. I haven't lost the data. I mean, they're sitting in that hard drive down there, but I've got a laptop. But you'll also notice that I'm really horribly lit. This side of the face has no lighting. That's because my cords only extend so far, and my Ethernet cord, basically, I've had to rearrange the entire room because the university put the desks on the opposite corner of the room of the Ethernet port, and not even my 10-foot cable can do it. But I've got 2 USB ports, an HDMI port, and I may not be able to have the hard drive and microphone plugged in at the same time, but by God, we're going to review some Lower Decks tonight. So yeah, with out of the way, I'm going to wait for the episode where they went, hey, that bit where Rutherford tried all the different careers in season 1 was great, let's do it again. I'm going to wait for that episode to come out, watch it, and report back here. So I'll see you then. Before we start, my body does this thing where COVID was actually a very minor illness, but because I was sick for all of 24 hours, my body does this thing where I will now have this cough for the next 3 months. So again, expect probably some of exactly that, for coughing reasons. All in all, I think that was a pretty good episode of Lower Decks. I think, that's my turn to try and light myself better. I think it was a very safe episode, a bit predictable as well in the format of, the crew swap places and empathize. It wasn't what I thought, which was what season 1 did with Rutherford, where attendees in engineering, mariners in medical or something, like that kind of swapping roles. But I think it still had some fun with it. I think the beginning was better than the latter part. I found the latter part, I started more critiquing it than watching it, which I notice is always, if I'm into a story more, I'll just kind of watch it. But once it starts losing me, I'll just kind of start questioning things and really almost picking it apart. I will say, I thought this was actually really clever, and this episode was going to fix what my biggest, not necessarily complaint, but my biggest problem with this series so far has been, I've talked a lot about how I don't see how they can keep the crew as ensigns for as long as this series is probably going to want to go. And I thought this was going to be the episode where, sure, maybe they do something, help themselves out a bit, and they learn from it. But I thought this was going to be, they did so poorly in these exams, these drills, that Starfleet wouldn't promote any of them for years. And a quarter of the way through, it occurred to me, and I was like, yeah, I believe now that this crew will not move up for 5 more years, a full 7-year season. And I thought I was going to fix that problem, but it didn't. In fact, it almost made it worse if the Cerritos performed at a perfect 100%. That being said, it was still fun. I think it was almost in a season 1 kind of way. It was a lot of very specific references. It was more a watch the reference sort of episode, which isn't bad, but I almost feel now, moving into season 2, we kind of expect a bit more from Lower Decks of its own thing. And I also think it didn't really progress the characters. It's almost feeling these season 2 episodes have had a lot of a format of it builds up on everyone's characters, right? And they learn more about each other. And then the next episode, it almost feels like we've reverted a bit. Like, sure, they developed something specific and it didn't come up in this episode, but it almost felt like we've gone back to square one and the developments aren't really mattering so much. Like, that was only a minor problem here, because it's a very different sort of development you're doing, I guess. You're developing across the ranks, the lower and upper decks, whereas before it's just kind of specific characters. But I almost feel like after this episode, the next episode, are we really going to notice a change between how the command in the lower decks react? Because I feel like it'll just feel like the start of this episode again. I might be wrong. I'd love to be wrong. But I'm almost noticing a bit of a trend where we develop and then almost hit the reset button. Almost, because there's the long series developments I've been talking about, like Boimler getting more confident, and we're still seeing that here. But it's almost the little bits are starting to feel a little reset button-y. But once again, this was an episode where a lot of what I liked was the little things. There was a joke that actually made me laugh, do a bit burst, where it was the Klingon who he's like, it was clearly Worf, he's like, I broke my spine, yada, and it was like picking up a peanut. And I don't know why, the peanut thing just made me laugh. Worf became paralyzed because a barrel fell on him. A barrel clearly full of nothing. And it was just like, I don't know, taking that to the even more extreme. Best joke of the episode. And the Borg Queen sounded a bit older. I know Picard's got their own Borg Queen for the modern era, but I wonder if they've brought back one of the old Borg Queen actresses, particularly the First Contact one, because it sounded like an older individual. I mean, I'm going to feel real bad if they're like 20, but I didn't recognize the voice, but I recognized it as older, almost like how Q sounds a bit older, or Janeway maybe sounds a bit older. I would not be surprised. I'll look both of those up on the Reddit. I did like how the cold open tied into the episode more directly. Probably isn't the first episode to do that, Lower Decks wise. Obviously, it's not the first Trek one. But especially it being something we've seen in the trailers before, so it wasn't as funny. I did like that. I'm also pretty sure, yes, I know my microphone's in the way, but, these are more guides for me than for you. I'm pretty sure the Borg battle scene is actually gotten more intense again. There's loads more explosions and everything. The Cerritos gets attacked a lot and actually explodes. They shot at the Cerritos. It didn't burst into flames, but there were more explosions, I felt, than before. I might just be noticing now, but, again, what's this battle going to look like at the end of 7 seasons? I can't wait to find out. In the comments below, place your bets on when you think the Dominion gets involved. I didn't notice any references in the name. I noticed Jennifer the Andorian appears to not have a name that's not Jennifer. Sharian. I'm noticing, though, the list of scenarios has a lot of references. Some episode titles. Kobayashi Maru looks like it's coming off the screen. Cause and Effect is an episode. Evolution, pretty sure is an episode. Survival of the Fittest, feels like it should be an episode, but I don't think it is. Chain of Command is technically not an episode, but Chain of Command parts 1 and 2 are. Hero Worship is the episode where Data got, I almost said a secret admirer. No, you didn't. But where that kid tried to be Data. And Naked Time is, of course, Mariner's Simulation, which is a reference to both, The Naked Time is the TOS episode, and The Naked Now is the TNG episode. But then this was kind of the fun bit where we basically revisited specific episodes, or very famous concepts. Obviously, the Mirror Universe, little bits of Discovery, with one of the crew being some sort of slave thing. I love the ISS Cerritos design, by the way. Just everything about it. It was a nice... you probably wouldn't normally pick up on it so much. Because it's so in place. Like Discovery, genuine coughs. It really does fit into just a Terran Empire version with, a bit of more of a budget than they would have had back in the day. Because it's animated, but... yeah, very nicely done. Already talked about the Klingon one. Obviously, a reference to that time Worf was paralyzed by an empty barrel. Loved, obviously, the reference to not the gunfighters. The gunfighters is Doctor Who. Dang it, Doctor Who, you're going to make me look this up. Spectre of the Gun. A reference to Spectre of the Gun. The town especially That's a better view. All of the buildings were just the facades, the set pieces, which is one of my favorite season 3, in particular of the original series, had a lot of budget saving measures, and that's one of my all-time favorite. Let's spend no money on this episode. Is let's make the fact that it's a set part of the episode. And yeah, they're in the hologram, but that also solidifies that yes, they're actually taking historical examples in these simulations. So this is Kirk's battle at the OK Corral, something that 60s sci-fi seems to reference constantly, expecting you to know it. So is apparently something the cultural conscience has just forgotten about in the past, 60 years. Which is always fascinating to me, because both Star Trek and Doctor Who do that, the OK Corral, and they just kind of assume you know what it is. Doctor Who is even worse. I don't think it ever bothers to explain what happened, and I can only follow the story because of Star Trek. And, those are both the 60s, and that's America and the UK. So clearly it was either an absolutely massive coincidence or some sort of incredibly well-known not disaster, but historical event akin to the Titanic that in, 2-3 generations we've forgotten about. And to me, it's like, what if my kids don't know what the Titanic is? And that's crazy to me. Really like how Lower Decks is the Wrath of Khan uniform as well. I'm not actually as big a fan of him as most people are. I know there are a lot of people's favorites, but I really like how it's done in that art style. I really wish I had an art team that could, do the thumbnails as I drew these videos, not a partner who's working. Tell you what though, Monday's video is probably a review of the Enterprise A, because I'm not going to be able to get my pre-recorded videos back in time for that. I loved as well, I think I mentioned this in one of the videos where I saw on the Reddit, it would have been last episode with the Skin of Evil, was I love this show's determination to make sure we all remember the parts of canon we try and forget. Of course, it's referenced Threshold with Anthony, the Skin of Evil. It's, I don't know, it references, it likes to bring up the bad parts of canon we don't talk about. And this is a slightly off example, but it brought back, the Borg just grow babies, which is, of course, something from Q Who that is one of those things where you watch through the franchise, and then you go back again, and you're like, wait, the Borg grow their own babies? That's not how the Borg work. And so I love Lower Decks' insistence of everything is canon, as much as I think very few people will follow that, especially embrace it. I'm better than most, but there are a few things where I'm like, no, this clearly doesn't work. It doesn't connect at all. Therefore, I have some sort of headcanon explanation. There's something about the way Lower Decks does it and what they reference and how they reference it, that I just love Lower Decks' insistence of course, the official stance of everything is canon. And we're going to make sure you don't forget. Those Borg babies are adorable, though. You can't see them. God. Naked Time obviously did the reference. That microphone is censoring what is honestly not an indecent man. Which was one where I thought about, I wasn't sure about it. I mean, I enjoyed it, but later when I started losing interest, this is just an official state simulation where they throw you in with naked members of the crew who have absolutely no inhibition, which I don't think I have to explain the problematic nature of that. But also, this is a society where, communal nudity is just kind of a thing, but this almost takes the consent thing out of it. Unless, maybe everyone signed in their Starfleet contract that the state may show naked holograms of you with no inhibition, but a lot of hologram things have had that slightly uncomfortable notion to it. One of my favorites is there's the episode Deep Space Nine where basically Quark tries to get a body scan of Kira, and he uses a holo imager to try and just basically in real life just take a picture of her to get presumably fully nude, then models for his disgusting program, whatever. The interesting thing about that is a holo imager is the exact name for what the Doctor uses for what he takes pictures of everyone and everything within Voyager, suggesting that cameras in the Star Trek universe are just capable of taking like nude pictures of anyone. So this is another one of those weird examples where I don't really know. We're Trekkies, so this may shock you, but I think there is such a thing as too liberal. You know, not. It's hard to hit that limit, but I think there is a limit somewhere in that scale. That being said, this is actually a shockingly accurate simulation where you add a lot in this episode of Dr. Tiana and Shax's relationship, shall we call it. That was also represented here. But also you have Boimler's, I'm not going to get it on this monitor, but Boimler's scene. I've spent too much time on this, but I'm not monetized yet. I can do what I want. That being said, wow, that looks like Tiana's just snuggling up to my microphone. I love the Shax Tiana relationship. I think is just a great character development thing because we never really do anything with it. It's just there with two people we're not really following. I mean, that's how the world works. You know, loads of people have loads of relationships that you just don't really follow. And this Serena, I've said it before, the Lower Decks team is amazing at character building and just making this feel like a community. And that's what I mean, it's a ship. It's basically a little village of like a few hundred people, and I love it. That being said, some of these scenes do kind of stretch. I mean, I should do a video. Write that down. You, editing this, write that down. But I've got a great, in my head of how holodecks work with infinite space and people getting infinitely far away from each other. These little, like, body-sized pods, some of these scenes stretch that a bit. You can still kind of explain this away, especially with artificial gravity. Like, they could still be standing up in this scene. But we kind of, even for me, pushed the limits of a holodeck a bit. Also was weird was this as the four senior officers doing this stuff together. And it's kind of implied they've been doing this together the whole time. We saw the crate stacking exercise that they did together. The very next scene is, all right, now that you've all done your individual assignments, we're going to come together as a group. And I think it's the first time the narrative didn't really work. The disconnect with Lower Decks, and it was just weird. I thought that rubbed me the wrong way. The Enterprise B, which you can see in there, obviously technically it's the Excelsior. What the heck is that ship? So it looks like the Enterprise B, right? I thought it was the Enterprise B while I was watching this, because it's got the little bumps around the cells. That's obviously an Enterprise B or Excelsior style saucer. I thought it looked wrong. That's because I can identify it here now. Those are the Enterprise E nacelles. You can see the way they slant up, the way they're kind of rectangular. But this isn't actually the Enterprise B, because if you look at the bottom, that rim kind of continues on the back. That looks like, to me, the Enterprise C concept. So the one that's on the Enterprise wall in the D, and also there's the painting of it, the Probert concept. It's like an amalgamation of Enterprises, which is really weird. And also I was thinking, can you tell we're getting to the part where it's starting to lose me a bit. Escape from space docks. Steal the Cerritos from space dock and use it to save Spock on the Genesis planet. Is that something Starfleet really wants to promote? Like, sure, it's history. Sure, it's common knowledge. But if you're creating official scenarios, like, first off, this is a scenario of betraying, of committing treason. What was it? 14 crimes Kirk and crew were charged with? And it's not really model behavior. And this is why it felt more like a season 1 than a season 2 thing. It's a time where the reference seems to have come before the plot, and so it doesn't feel as natural and kind of takes away from things. That being said, I love the Ransom bit. They don't have yeomans. I kind of took it as he's an ensign, but Mariner gets an insult like yeoman, is an insult. Not that being a yeoman is insult worthy, Do they still have yeomans in the Navy? I don't know. But I loved Ransom's bit when then he came back. He's like, how do you want your coffee? Oh, wow. Like, already, that must be a record. It is. I love that. You know, there were a lot of good moments. This was an okay plot with a lot of good and great moments. And so when that's sort of your lower end of the episode, you still have a great series. Your below average is a good plot. And again, what was getting kind of predictable, like, yeah, obviously the crew's kind of coming together from this. That was always the resolution of this episode. But as they were describing it like, oh, it was all a trick, the team building exercise, I'm like, yeah, but the twist is going to be that it isn't. Like, it was just kind of a safe, formulaic episode almost. And I get, especially in episodic television, you kind of need those episodes every now and then. You need the episodes where, like, okay, we're putting a lot of work in, like, the finale, the big story beat. And I don't actually know if Lower Decks is a writer's room situation or more like a Doctor Who was, where you submit kind of scripts. But maybe, like, the showrunners focusing more on these plot-heavy bits, you kind of have this episode that gets a little less focus. You know, that's just how things work. But still, it's not the most exciting thing as the viewer, you know. But anyway, I do hope Boimler gets credit for his, like, 100% thing. I mean, with the Cerritos, you know, he gets credit for saving the ship and doing a lot, which is really what matters for the upwards mobility. But yeah, it's the show picking up Boimler a bit more at the end, which I'm not always a big fan of. Yeah, but that was another bit where, like, Mariner could get trampled to death by a horse because of holodeck safeties. I'm sure Boimler could be assimilated painlessly. I don't think the holodeck could take over his mind. I don't think he should really feel anything being assimilated. It should be a maybe somewhat traumatic psychologically, but completely painless process. Yeah, it was just another bit, like, the episode had lost me a bit, so I'm thinking more like, Boimler's not in any danger, but, like, why is he in any discomfort? Also, the simulated Borg Queen, there was a reference with the color of Boimler's skin. It was kind of implied she thought he was an android, like Data, of course, and was into that, which would imply that Data's sexual relations with the Borg Queen are a matter of Starfleet record, which I like that. Could you imagine Daj one day going through Data's records to see what he was like and encountering that time he had sex with the Borg Queen? I'm glad they didn't destroy the crystalline entity, though. So I thought that's what they were doing, and it was going to be real messed up, because the whole point of the crystalline entity arc is establishing that the crystalline entity is a sentient life form that has some form of higher reasoning. Oh, and also, again, excellent animation quality. They actually improved that intro scene. I say improved, they were probably still working on it when it was in the trailer. But the reflections on their visor, all the rainbowy stuff in here, the time manipulation stuff. The model of the entity itself was great and reminded me a lot of the TNG model as well. I do wonder how the ship faked the, like, time streaky things, though, when they visited the intro. Finally, can we appreciate, just looking at that there, how well Boimler did in his 100% run, that being assimilated by the collective is still an 8%? I mean, that's an amazing 100% run right there. I've also just remembered all the simulations were recorded, meaning that Naked Time was also recorded, including Boimler's scene. Boimler being an officer we specifically know isn't comfortable with communal nudity. Anyways, at least we finally remedied, at least at the ship level, the really nonsensical and horrific policy of giving the lower decks less replicator options for some reason. Yeah, they say rank has its privileges, but also, these aren't, like, delicacy items. Like, you could just get them from your replicator at home. Like, becoming a Starfleet officer is actually a downgrade in your meal quality, and, like, sure, that's also true for, like, the military. I'm a student. Like, yeah, that's true in a lot of things, but this also isn't a post-scarcity society. Like, there's a reason some foods are more elite or whatever, and it all falls apart in a post-scarcity utopia. I mean, still, he said most of the replicator options, and I'm honestly can't understand. It's not like hard drive space is an issue. Voyager, may I remind you, had Ferengi transport databases, just that it carried around in the ship's computer all the time. They did. Oh my god, that was actually Alice Craig as the Borg Queen. Yes, that was the first contact Borg Queen reprising their role as the Borg Queen. Lower Decks. Amazing. I'm back on the Reddit, by the way, looking up those actors. Secret Nye Girl. Nice detail. During Mariner's naked time drill, Billups can be seen in the background just typing on a pad. Yes, right there. As I am cleverly covering up the... Look, I have to live by YouTube's rules. Billups just typing on a pad. Naked. But, lovely bit of continuity from the last episode. Oh yeah, and again on that detail, Mirror Universe, I just read his name. Billups. Mirror Universe Billups was very turned on by torture, and in classic Mirror Universe fashion, was also seriously lacking inhibition. And so I loved, again, just the opposite. I actually quite like the universe. Mirror Universe is a concept pre-2009. I like the Mirror Universe. But this is a nice addition. But people seem to enjoy that episode a little bit more than me. Am I hypercritical of Lower Decks now? If I am the hypercritical Lower Decks fan, then this is a very successful series. Oh my god, 51 minutes. Well, thanks for watching. I have class at 10 a.m. because one CS class decided, you know what, I'm not gonna have Thursday like everyone else, and also I'm not gonna record the lectures. It's the hell class. It's the class that every quarter has one. It's the class that is the source of all my problems, but I've got to go and edit it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you hopefully Monday, if not Thursday, or rather hopefully Monday and then every other subsequent time. Thanks for watching.